I call it burnout camp. I got to a point in my life where I hit the wall.
I'm Michael Hyatt.
And I'm Megan Hyatt Miller.
And this is The Double Win, a show about winning at work and succeeding at life.
And, here at our company, Full Focus, we have identified 9 life domains: body, mind, spirit, love, family, community, money, work, and hobbies that we're going to help you cultivate so that you can ultimately be the person that you were made to be, that you want to be, and live the life you want to live. So today's guests cover a lot of ground, but I think perhaps the most relevant is the work domain. And what's interesting about this conversation is how much the work domain affects every other domain. And that's a little bit of a teaser because there's a whole conversation about
Well, it is a little bit of a teaser because we learned some things about the double win that we didn't know before.
That's right.
We're supposed to be the experts.
That's right.
Yeah, apparently we're not. Well, anyway, Patrick Lencioni is a guy that I'm super excited to introduce to you. Pat's a friend of mine. He's had a huge impact on me through his books, YouTube videos, other stuff, but he's a president and founder of the Table Group, the pioneer of the organizational health movement, and a popular speaker. He's the author of 13 books that have sold over 5 million copies. Actually, it says 8 million copies here. That's a lot.
That's a lot of books.
So including the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, which I think is his best-selling book, The Advantage, the 3 Big Questions for a Frantic Family, and the book that we talk a lot about in this episode, The 6 Types of Working Genius. So Pat's had a lot of big league experience, mostly in the tech industry. He went to work out of college at Bain & Company, Oracle, Sybase. He now lives in the San Francisco Bay Area. He has a wife and 4 sons. So here's our conversation with Pat. Pat, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here. I can't wait to talk to you all. This is fun.
I was trying to think this morning, when was the first time that you and I met?
It's hard for me to remember because there were different contexts for it. I think I first heard of you in the world of publishing years ago.
May have been.
And we have so many mutual friends that kind of weaved in and out of all this. So I often say, like, I can't remember how I know Michael Hyatt because there's about 5 different people and 5 different contexts in which we've been friends.
I think we've spoken maybe at the same event a couple times, or different events at the same time. I don't remember.
We've met in green rooms. We've met in blue rooms. We've met in in many different places. Yeah.
Well, I knew you were a kindred spirit from 2 minutes into the conversation. You're a man of faith. You are very intentional with your family. You've got a killer business. You're the perfect guest for the double win, which is winning at work and succeeding at life. And we believe in you've got to have both. Otherwise, you ultimately lose both. So again, welcome. We'd love for you to just vamp on this a little bit. What is work-life balance or work-life integration, or however you think about that? What does that mean to you, and how do you think about it?
Well, I think first of all, just so people know that I've made a lot of mistakes. Life is a mess. And I think that thinking that it's not is a big problem, because then when we make mistakes, we are like, what's wrong? And it's like, well, that's how we learn. So when people talk to me, they're like, so do you have it all figured out? I'm like, oh, no. But I'm trying really hard. And so for me, work-life balance is not so much about push and pull. It's more about integration and knowing who you are and being present. But what is that? That sounds very theoretical, but it's kind of just leaning all into everything you're doing. Now, some of us, based on different circumstances, can do that better than others. But I have 4 sons and a wife, and they are far more important to me than my work. But my work is an important thing for my family, and it's my vocation, my professional vocation. So all of these things are important. And if it was trying to beg Peter to pay Paul, I would never get it right. It's kind of just integrating all of it together and doing my best. And I'm still learning. I'm literally 4 days away from my youngest son graduating high school. I'll be an empty nester in months, and my parenting life, my home life is still very challenging. So I'd like to explore this with you and learn from you and share any insights I might have with your audience.
Well, I would love to hear, was there ever a time when maybe you didn't have this insight and you were given all your time to work? I know you worked for some big corporations and you had an awakening where maybe there was a crisis or maybe something that made you think like, I've got to give more time to my family or to the other areas of my life.
And you've been
You
in
know,
industries where that would be the expectation, I'm
Yeah.
assuming.
Yes. So my first job was at Bain and Company, a management consultant. And that was just work 90 hours a week and whatever you have left over for your family, that's fine. If you really want one, but I don't know if you need one. So that was really
Wow.
a wake up call right out of college. I was just like, whoa, these people are like this. And then I worked for this company called Oracle in its early days, which was one of the hardest charging companies in the world. But coming from Bain, I thought it was a party, because it was nothing like that. It was only like 80 hours a week. I saw the sunlight sometimes when I left the office, and I thought that was cool. And so I got introduced before marriage, before family, to the craziness. And I knew that there was something wrong. And then in my third job at a tech company, the head of marketing, and I was a relatively young person there. I was in my mid-20s, early 20s. And the head of marketing, a well-known guy, was sitting down with me one day and we were going over some slides for a presentation. He goes, "Hey, Pat, do you have kids?" And I said, no, I don't. He goes, "Well, when you have kids, spend time with them because I have a 16-year-old son and I don't know him." And then he goes,
Wow.
"Okay, back to our slides." And that was a beautiful gift that he gave me.
Mm.
So from the time I started my own company, I was like determined not to lose the right priority. The problem was I tried to be the world's greatest dad, the world's greatest husband, the world's greatest boss, the world's greatest author. And so I just tried to be all of them, never giving short shrift to my family. What I didn't do is take care of myself.
Ooh, wow.
So
what
wasn't
was your
classic,
realization of that moment? Like, how did that come to you?
I call it burnout camp. I got to a point in my life where I hit the wall.
Mm.
And I will tell you, I was totally immersed in my family life and in my work life. And I hadn't understood or explored wounds and childhood stuff and just done
Mm.
any work on myself. And at some point you just hit the wall.
Mhm.
And I did. And I got 2 weeks of attention from some doctors and other things and realized that, yeah, I'd been burning it on every end. And I had been doing that most of my life. And I needed to start to heal. And that's
Wow.
been a process of the last 10 or 15 years of trying to explore things like that.
So what changes did you make at that point?
Main thing, I actually went to see counselors,
Wow. I
and
love that.
and my faith life was always very important, but what I realized is that I didn't really know how to receive love. And so I
Mm.
was giving from a deficit. And some of our mutual friends, Henry Cloud and Daniel Harkavy, two people we both know, have spoken into me about this. And I just never really looked at myself. I was always like, what can I give to others? And in our faith life, we have to receive God's love before we can give it to others. And I wasn't a good receiver. And so that's kind of what I've been working on.
Oh, that's amazing.
In your journey, have there been, over the last 15 years or so, are there some non-negotiables, things that for you, you've kind of had to put into place to maintain that work-life integration and make sure that you have time for you so that you can work on yourself?
Well, the prayer is number one. I mean, prayer is number one. And that is, I've got to spend time alone with God.
Yeah.
And, I'm Catholic. I try to go to mass. I'm going to go to daily mass today if I can. I try to wake up every morning and do some Bible reading and then just spend time alone with God. It's so easy for that to go away. Like I'm too busy. And that's a non-negotiable. Too much travel is a non-negotiable for me. Now I will say that's the one thing I've been pretty good at. Like I used to get invited to a lot of overseas trips that I would say no to because I had family stuff going on, or like high profile events that I was like, I don't really think I need to know those people, or things that would have been a little bit more vanity oriented. And I always chose not to do them, but then I burnt myself out on other things. So for me, work-life balance is really about just life balance. I was oversubscribed to every part of my life. And even in my family, I was actually oversubscribed in my family. I volunteered to coach every team and do every activity because I needed to prove that I could be everything to everyone. And that's not good.
Thank you so much for your vulnerability. I think that's going to mean a ton to the folks that are listening, because I think it's easy to think that the people that are your heroes or that write the books that you read, you know, they've got it all figured out. It just comes easily to them. They don't make any mistakes. What's wrong with me? You know, and it's just not true.
No, gosh, no. Oh, and you know, I was talking on a podcast yesterday about this, about how sharing your struggles with others is a gift, because in this social media culture, when people are like posting how happy they are and how everything's great, and we have all this advice, one of the best things, the people that have made the biggest impact on my life are people that have shared their struggles with me, so I didn't feel alone, and I didn't feel like, what's wrong with me? And some of the people I admire most are the ones that are most vulnerable about, the mistakes they've made. So that's a gift to put it out there to people and say, oh yeah, I've screwed up, you know.
I shared last night on an Instagram story, and by the time people are listening to us, it'll be gone. But I shared about my lifelong struggle with anxiety, but I didn't really have words to express it until a couple years ago. And, you know, I just thought it was racing thoughts, insomnia. You know, I'd worry about the future. I'd sometimes in the middle of the night catastrophize about the future. And then I finally found out that it was anxiety, but I admitted that on social media, and I've been in therapy for that now, and I've got some really good tools that have helped dramatically, but it didn't happen overnight. But what I was amazed by is that got more views, more comments, more people saying, in fact, somebody that's pretty well known said to me in a direct message, they said, buddy, I have struggled with this for years. It's overwhelmed me at times and I don't know where to turn. Could we have a conversation?
Yeah. So and I think a lot of high achievers struggle with this.
Absolutely.
You know, one of the things, I'm exploring wounds right now, like understanding childhood wounds. There's this amazing book by this guy named Dr. Bob Schutz, and it's called Be Healed. And it's a faith look at the childhood wounds and how they play out in our life, how we make vows to ourselves based on our wounds. We tell ourselves lies, then we make a vow, and it leads to really destructive behavior. But the problem is it's destructive behavior that gets valued and encouraged in society. It leads us to be high achievers, and we make money and we influence others and we get attention. But it's often because we're acting out of our wounds, and essentially it's fear-based success.
Yeah.
Well, any fear-based success is just eventually going to hit a wall. And so this is something that so many of the people I work with are like, I need to hear about this, because this anxiety, whether it's OCD, and it's all a big spectrum, it's fear-based success. And unfortunately, the world doesn't warn you about it until you crash and burn.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the 6 types of working genius. Now, let me just kind of set this up a little bit. I think for most of us, and this doesn't sound like it was true of you, but I think for a lot of people in our audience, they struggle to make room for the other parts of their life, like family, like their personal health, their intellectual development, all the rest. And the thing that I love about Working Genius, and Megan and I have both taken the test or the assessment, is that it allows you to focus where you make the biggest contribution. And for me, at least, the message, well, I don't have to do everything. I just need to lean into what I do great. And if I do that, that's going to move the business forward. And it's going to also allow time for my life.
Yeah, it really speaks to the whole concept of burnout. And this is a topic that gets back to our anxiety and all this stuff. But burnout is really misunderstood, because most people think burnout is doing just too much work. And yeah, there is a part of burnout that's related to that. But you can do a lot of work in an area that give you passion and energy and joy, and not get burned out, and go home and be a better version of yourself for your family. You could do half the number of hours and go home more frustrated and more defeated if you're not doing the right kind of work.
Yeah.
And really,
and it affects your joy.
Really interesting distinction that I've never thought about till you just said that.
Yep.
That is great.
Well, it's like we often think of burnout as being a quantitative issue.
Yeah.
You know, there's too much quantity. We need less quantity, we'll be less burnout. But there's also the qualitative piece, which It's about what we're doing during that time. And it's not all equal and it's not neutral,
Not at all. In fact, you can work 6 hours a day and go home and be really miserable. You could work 12 hours a day and go home and have lots of energy for your loved ones and for in your own life, depending on what you're doing. And God gives us these gifts. We're very clear in the book and in the assessment. These are God-given. These are not things that you develop. We are born with different geniuses. And we are meant to unwrap that gift, not brag about ourselves, but brag about the giver, and then use them, because that's why we're on earth, to use the gifts we have in service of others. And
that's fantastic.
when we don't do that, it's really messes us up inside. And I've had jobs. My first job out of college, I failed at. I worked 80 hours a week, probably. Maybe on average only 70. and I thought I was a failure. And it was, when I look back now, I realized it was exactly the wrong job for me. And it was something I carried with me for decades, thinking I was not smart, I was lazy. And I realized later on, oh my gosh, I was just in completely the wrong job for my geniuses. And so many people out there are feeling unnecessary guilt and judgment because they didn't realize not everybody can do every job, and we're not meant to.
Yeah, especially if you're a high achiever, because you think, with brute force, I can do anything.
Yes. In fact, high achievers. So this gets back to, this is where it all comes together. So because of my wounds and my high achieving and fear, I actually got really good at things I hated.
Ugh.
Wow.
And then you're trapped.
Yeah.
By your own success.
And then people are like, you should do more of that. And you're like, please don't make me do more of that.
Can you give us an example of something you got really good at, but didn't enjoy?
Sure. Like, so as a kid, I did everything my parents, coaches, teachers, and everybody told me to do. But if you look at my Myers-Briggs and especially my working genius, you'll realize that was completely against the grain. I mean, I got straight A's. And in college, I would go to the library and grind and grind and grind. But if you look at my personality, I'm the kind of person that should only take classes that I'm interested in. I should blow off the things I know I don't need to do. Like, oh, the teacher gave me that assignment, but I don't really need to do that. I can figure this out on my own. No, I would do it by the letter of the law. And my wife met me in college, and my room was perfectly clean, and I went to every class. I had 2 notebooks for every class. I'd recopy my notes. None of this was natural. It was all because I was so afraid to fail that I would do these things. Wow. And there was anxiety, and there was OCD, and all these other things built into that. And then I get out of college, and I interview for the best job in America that year. And I get it because I know how to interview, and I know how to present myself. But then I actually have to do the work. And when you have to do something 70 hours a week under pressure, and it's something you don't like, I finally got to the point where I can't be the best at this anymore. And it's crushing me. So I got really good at doing things by the book, taking the long route, never taking a shortcut, always doing exactly what was expected of me. There are certain people who that's how they work. And they love that. They're like, tell me exactly what to do. I love hitting all my numbers. I love doing things by the book. I'm a creative guy. And I was doing everything in any way but creative. And it crushed me eventually.
Okay, share with us how you came to write this book, because you are a mega successful author. Is this your most recent book?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's got to be a story behind this. And then I'd like for you to just share the basic framework of the book.
And then selfishly, I want you to interpret our results,
because
we have you here and you're a captive audience.
I can't wait to do that. So just so you know, I've been a junkie for every kind of personality test and model.
Me too.
Yeah.
I use them all. And we used Myers-Briggs in our practice. We still use it in certain ways, in DISC, and I've done StrengthsFinder, all those things. I think it's fascinating and interesting. So this came about by accident. And 4 years ago, almost not even 4 years ago, I was in my office. I was doing all this work on Zoom. And I would go from one Zoom call where I'd be really excited to another one, and I'd be kind of bummed out and frustrated. The next thing I'd be really excited. And this woman that worked for me, she turned to me and she said, Pat, why are you like that? Why do you go up and down so much? And it was purely a curiosity and concern for me. And it's something that I'd been experiencing in my own company for 20 years. That I loved the people I worked with and I loved what I did, but I'd come to work excited and I would get bummed out most days at some point. And she said, why do you do that, do you think? And I said, I don't know, but I want to figure it out. And over the course of the next 4 hours, truly by the grace of God, because I felt like I blacked out and I was talking to my team. We said there's certain kinds of work that frustrates me and certain kinds of work that I love. And we came up with these 6 circles on the board, which my wife later turned into gears because they're interdependent. And we said, there's certain pieces of the work experience that I'm meant to do that I love. And when I come to work, I'm totally excited to do those. And then I get dragged into some that I feel like I have to do, but I don't love. They don't feed me. And after a while, I get really grumpy. And after 20 years of oversubscribing to the wrong kind of work, I started to resent it.
Yeah.
And it was like, and by the way, we weren't trying to come up with a model or write a book. We were just trying to figure out what was making me grumpy.
That's great.
And somebody saw the whiteboard that we were working on. And the next day he shared the model with a CEO client of his. And the guy had tears in his eyes. He said, wait, this explains my problem too. And we realized, there's something universal here. So a small team of us spent 3 months with my son, who you met earlier, putting together an assessment to try to help people understand what it was. And the demand was so high. And here's what it is. It actually explains the kind of work you do, like tactically. Like I love Myers-Briggs, but it's more about your personality. It's the noun of who you are and all this stuff. But I never understood, so what kind of job should I have? What kind of work should I be doing? This one is the closest to the work. And the assessment, it's amazing. It takes 12 minutes to fill it out. And 5 minutes after getting the results back, people look at it and go, oh, yeah, this explains why I failed at that job, or why I love this job, why these projects go well, why these ones don't, and why my wife and I argue. It's the craziest thing. And so the immediacy of the application blew us away. And that's why I'm having more fun working on this than anything I've ever done. And it's why I can't wait to find out what you guys are, because it really gives me handles around understanding you and what you love to do.
Well, before we tell you that, why don't you give us the 6 working geniuses?
Yeah.
Types. So give us those 6.
So there's 6 different, and what they are is 6 different kinds of work. And 2 of these 6 are your geniuses. Everybody has 2. But 2 of them are what we call your working competencies, which is you can do them, you're okay, you're competent at them, but they don't feed you. And there's 2 more that are your working frustrations. The way I say it is like your working genius is like you pour coffee into a Yeti mug, or like that sippy cup you have there, we call them. And and if you put a lid on it, it'll keep its heat for hours, right? But then if you pour coffee, that's your working genius. You get joy and energy from it. If you pour coffee into a Starbucks cup and put a lid on it, it'll stay warm for a while, but it'll eventually get cold. That's your working competency. But your working frustration is taking a coffee cup and pouring coffee into it, and there's a hole in the bottom of it. It just leaks out. And if you don't know what your genius, your competency, and your frustrations are, you can find yourself in doing work that destroys your energy, your joy, and the way you do everything else in your life. So that's how this works. So if we were to go through the 6 types of working genius really fast, the first one, the one that happens first in all of life, every company, every new idea, every endeavor starts with wonder. And somebody who has the genius of pondering things and asking the first question. This whole tool came about because somebody on my team, Amy, wondered. She said, why are you like that? She didn't know, but she asked the questions. I'm curious as to why you get frustrated. Or somebody says, I wonder if there's a better way to serve our customers, or maybe there's something missing in the things we're doing, or I wonder if this couldn't be better. Now, most people with a genius of wonder are not rewarded for it in life, especially in early education. They're like, quit asking questions, just do what you're told. And even in work, this is probably the loneliest genius in the sense that nobody really says, I'm glad you're always pondering. But everything starts with that question. And we need to let people know that it's valued and it's necessary. And it happens up at 50,000 feet with your head in the clouds. And then working genius works its way down to 5 feet where you land the plane. But it always starts in the clouds. The second genius in order is the one we all have, and that's invention. So somebody asks the question like, I wonder if there's a better way to do it. And then we go, give me a chance to come up with an idea. Right? We love that. And we're like, no more structure. Don't give me any boundaries. Let me just come up with something. Here's what's amazing about working genius. The 3 of us love to do that. There are people, if you gave them a job and said, listen, I'm not going to give you any parameters, just come up with whatever you want to do, and you let me know what you think, they'll say, what do you mean? That sounds like the worst job in the world. And I think, what do you mean? That's the best job in the world. And that's why one man's trash is another man's treasure. There are people in the world who don't want a job that relies on invention. And there's the rest. There's the three of us who's like, oh, please let me invent. And for years, we've been going around managing people the way we think we would like to be managed, hiring people and saying, okay, you're not going to have any parameters. You get to come up with your own job description. And they're like, I hate this. And we tend to go like, what's wrong with you? Aren't you smart? Aren't you creative? And they're like, no, I'm wired differently than you. And so wonder and invention are the first two geniuses. And those two are called ideation. That's where new ideas come from. All righty. The next genius is discernment. We have the gift of evaluating things, using our intuition, our instincts, pattern recognition. It's not a linear way of thinking. It's just we kind of look at things and it just kind of emerges for us. And it's not magic. It's just the way God wired us, that we can kind of look at a bunch of things and go, I think this is the right answer. And if somebody says why, we're like, I'm not sure, but every fiber of my being is saying this is the right thing. And I'm pretty sure it's true. The person on my team that has this that I love to talk about is a woman named Tracy. Tracy's looking for an office space for me right now because we're moving. And she called me today and said, I found it, Pat. It's great. You're going to love it. I sent you some pictures. We're going to need to move fast. And I literally said to her, just take it. If you think it's good, it must be. Because I know that Tracy's gut is almost always right.
Wow.
And my wife and I'll be at home and we'll say, should we refinance the house? Where should we go on vacation? What should we do about this? And she'll say, ask Tracy. And you know what's amazing? Tracy said when she was a little girl, her friends would always go to her and go, ask Tracy. She just knows what to do. And I can say this about you, Megan. You know this is true, that somebody can go to you and you can go, yeah, I feel my gut tells me this, and people can rely on that.
Yep.
It's true.
And when I get in trouble is when I ignore it, which of course I have.
Yes.
And it always comes back to bite me. And I'm like, when will I learn? I do think I'm getting better at that, but it's challenging in a very concrete world to not be able to express the concrete rationale for something, at least not right away. Sometimes it'll come later,
You know what's funny? Remember that first job I had? Well, let's go through these and we'll go back to that because it's so interesting. Because discernment, I love to use my discernment. And when somebody says, prove it to me, show me the data, I'm like, oh no. So the next genius after discernment comes galvanizing. That's like after something's been discerned, like, yeah, this is a great idea. We feel really good about it. The inventor invented, the discerner discerned. They went back and forth and they're like, okay, we're ready to go. Then the galvanizer comes in and says, let me get people excited. Let's get the troops in the room. Let's talk about it. Let me pitch it to them. Let me make a plea for their commitment to this. And they love to sell. They love to inspire. They love to remind. Well, here's the thing. I don't love to do that. I can do it. It's one of my competencies. But as the CEO of my company, I thought I was supposed to be the chief galvanizing officer. So I'd come into work and every day I was getting dragged into over galvanizing and it was crushing me. And I finally looked at a guy on my team who had galvanized. I said, you should be the chief galvanizing officer. And he goes, well, I'm not old enough to do that. And I don't have enough experience. I said, no, it's a gift. And he goes, I would love to do that. I said, okay, every morning you're going to get people excited about all the things we're doing. You're going to remind them, you're going to pitch them. And it's not that I don't have to do any of it, but please don't lean on me to do that all the time. His job satisfaction went up. My job satisfaction went up. We got twice as much done in less time. And it was because we understood that let's let people lean into their geniuses.
Yeah, I love this.
I love it.
So D and G are the middle steps. The last two steps are called implementation, and that's enablement. So this is we're going to land the plane. We're getting down to like 10,000 feet. We're going to have to put this plane on the ground. And we're like, okay, next plane. And they're like, no, we have to land this one first. And so it starts with enablement. So the galvanizer goes out and says, hey, everybody, we need your help. The person with enablement says, yes. What do you need from me? I'll do it. They're critical on a team. They're that utility player that says, whatever you need, I'll do it. You just let me know I'm there. So enablement is critical. And it's not just because they're nice. It's a genius. They actually wake up in the morning and say, if people ask me for my help, I will be so excited to say yes. And we're like, What makes them go? It's like, thank God they are like that, because we're not. And then the last one is tenacity, which is the person who doesn't just say, yes, I'll help. It says, what do we need to do to actually get it done right and to finish? They love finishing. They love the last steps. They love landing the plane and saying, there, it got done. Well, imagine, you guys, people take this, a team will take it and look at the team map and they'll go, we don't have anybody on our team with tenacity. Or we don't have anybody on our team with wonder. I was working with a group of executives at a big tech company, multi-billion-dollar tech company, that hadn't come up with a new idea in 10 years. All of their revenue came from old stuff. They were so frustrated, and so were their employees. So I did this with their executive team, and none of the executives had wonder as a genius. In fact, most of them had it as a frustration. So nobody ever said, gee, maybe this isn't right. I wonder if the market's saying something different. As they were always like managing their to-do list. And only one executive at this high-tech company had invention as a genius. And he was the lawyer.
Uh-oh.
Do you know what they did? They put him in charge of new technology development and acquisition.
Wow.
Not because of his background, but because he had a passion for new ideas. And that's the thing about this working genius. When you know what a person's genius is, suddenly their job description doesn't matter quite so much.
Wow.
You have a gift at that. We should let you use that gift for yourself and for the benefit of everybody around you. And this is what's going on in these organizations, and people that we're talking to, they're like, I finally understand what I'm meant to do. Not necessarily the field I'm supposed to be in, not necessarily my job description, but the work that gives me energy and where I can contribute the most. So those are the 6 types of working genius, starting with wonder, invention, discernment, galvanizing, enablement, and tenacity.
We're going to be a little bit selfish here for a second, Pat, and we're going to tell you what our 2 types of genius are. And we want to know, like, what does that mean? What should we do with our lives now?
Are we normal?
Are we normal? Okay. So mine are invention and discernment.
Those are mine.
We're twins.
Wow.
And remember, there's 15 different combos, permutations, and combinations.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So you and I just happen to be the same combination.
And I'm invention and galvanizing.
Okay, I was going to guess that, Michael.
Yeah.
I was going to guess that. So this is fun. So invention and discernment we're called the discriminating ideators, what means most of the ideas we come up with, we vet them in our heads. Yep. So by the time we put it out there, they're actually pretty well thought of. Mm-hmm. So we're doing both. We're coming up with a new idea and evaluating it simultaneously.
Yeah.
Now, Michael, you're an inventor and a galvanizer. That's called the evangelizing innovator. And that is, you're always coming up with new ideas and you love to pitch them and to inspire people to act on them. In fact, the connection between a new idea and the pitch of it happen simultaneously. And I know
That's so true.
Yeah. And I know so many people like you, Michael, and here's true. This is something true about all the IGs I know. When you first meet them, you can't really believe that they're sincere. They're so over the top in their excitement around things that it's easy to go, this guy can't really be like this. Our friend Daniel Harkavy's like that too. And yes, when you first meet them, you're like, can he really be that enthusiastic? And then you know them for a short period and you're like, he really is.
He really is.
And then when you come up with an idea though, if somebody comes up and says, well, I think you need to tweak it, you're very open, like, oh yeah, great, we could tweak it. So there's not that pride of ownership, but you just love to come up with new ideas and present them to the world, which is why you have a podcast and you've done all these other things. So I love that. This is really fun. You're both innovators. You're both inventors. You both love coming up with new ideas.
Yes, that's definitely true.
We're very similar on a lot of tests. And, Megan has half my DNA as my daughter. So I guess that's to be expected. The bottom ones for me.
Yeah, tell me about your working frustrations.
Yeah, my working frustrations are tenacity and enablement.
Me too.
Okay, those happen to be mine. And this is crazy, but it isn't, because the kind of people that do what we do, And my son will tell you this. He's one of our producers on our podcast. And when I'm on other people's podcasts, a lot of people who do what we do, that like curate ideas and come up with new ideas and share them with others, have similar working geniuses. So this is not common. It just happens to be common with a lot of people who do what we do. So the thing about you is this is almost painful to hear, but it's not a moral issue. And that is, the two things that you don't love to do are what we call, and I'll explain this in a bit, enablement and tenacity. Enablement is coming alongside and just saying to somebody, yes, I'll help you. Just whatever you need, I'll do it for you. Now, we love to help people, but not necessarily on their terms, right?
Exactly.
And as a follower of Jesus, I feel like, but I'm supposed to say yes, but I can't say yes if I don't have a chance to evaluate whether I really think they need that. And there are people in the world, and it's a gift, it's a God-given gift, who you can say, I just need this. And they say, I will give you what you want right now, the way you want it, no questions asked. And I don't have that, right? My wife says to me, hey, I need your help this weekend. And right away, I get this pit in my stomach. I'm like, what do you need, honey? And she says, I need you to help me clean the garage. And I'm like, oh, okay. And the first thing I say is, can I design what the garage is going to look like? And she's like, no, I don't want your invention. And I'm like, can I ask why you think we need to reevaluate the garage? And she's, no, I don't want your discernment. I just want you to stand in the corner, and when I hand you something, I want you to put it where I tell you. And that is crushing. And she has friends that are like, oh yeah, I'll do that. I'll just come over, we'll chat. I'll do whatever you ask me to do.
My wife is that way.
Yeah. And every team needs them. Every family needs them. But it's not my thing. Now, the tenacity that both of you guys is the finishing. And it's like, I love the beginning of things. I love getting things started.
Me too.
And then I like to move on to the next thing.
Yep.
And there are people in the world who, to them, that's anathema. They hate that. They're like, if I can't finish, if I can't see the end of it, if I can't cross it off the list, plow through the obstacles and hit my target, then I don't even want to do it. And I'm the opposite. I'm like, well, if I have to keep pushing through to the end, I don't really want to do it. And so we need one another. We need one another to get things done. But we are not. So the ET is called the loyal finisher. That's not who we are.
That is not who we are.
Wow.
Just the polar opposite of that.
Where can people take this assessment?
If you go to workinggenius.com, there's 2 G's in the middle there. You can take it, you can get it there and take it there. Teams can do it. They can do it. It's $25 and it takes 12 minutes.
And then you get this amazing report. You know, I'm looking at mine right now with all this incredible information. If you don't happen to find yourself fortunate enough to have Pat on your podcast to explain your results to you, that's okay, because he's already explained it in the report. So
would you recommend, Pat, that people take the test first and then read the book?
Take the test. Reverse? Take the test. The book allows you to go deeper, but what we've found is if you take the test, you so much of it makes sense. There's just enough description, and there's plenty of places to go deeper, the book and other things on the website, but just understand who you are, because most people do it, and within 5 minutes they look at it and they go, well, crap, this explains a lot. We had a guy who was doing a performance review. He was getting reviewed, and he knew he had done very poorly for the year. And so he knew his boss was going to give him a bad review, and his boss's boss came to the review too. He was going to be there. And so the night before, he did the Working Genius, and he looked at it and he goes, well, no wonder. So he comes to the performance review and says, before we get into the stuff from last year, can you guys read this? And they looked at the report, takes minutes to read. And they were like, well, crap, you're in the wrong job. No wonder you'd had such a terrible year. And he goes, I know. And they go, well, we have this other job you should do. You'd be really good. And they didn't even talk about his failure. They said, wow, let's get you in the right job. So this guy got a promotion rather than getting dinged because his manager just wanted to know who he was. He didn't even know it. But as soon as he showed this to him, he said, okay, this explains everything.
Wow.
So
we just think that everybody should know what their geniuses are. Unwrap the gifts God gave you.
Yeah.
And help others do it too.
I would think that it's really important if you're at work and in any role of leadership, whether you're the CEO or divisional manager, or department manager, or whatever, is to be thoughtful about the collection of employees or the team that you're building so that you've got all of these working geniuses, or at least the ones that are necessary, represented.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. In fact, what we say is the best combination of geniuses for a CEO is just the self-awareness ones.
Yeah.
In other words, just know who you are. And we've had CEOs of all types, but then they sit down and they go, okay, I need to surround myself with people who fill in my gaps.
Mhm.
And I need to celebrate the fact that they're better than me at things.
Yeah.
And you know, this is about your working genius, but I actually think it's just as much about your frustrations, so that you can go to people around you and go, just so you guys know, I suck at a few things. And you probably already know that, but now you can tell me that because I'm agreeing with you. And let's make sure that I don't do things that I suck at that are going to hurt the organization. And people are like, it increases the vulnerability and the openness about strengths and weaknesses.
That's fantastic.
You know, the thing that occurs to me too as you're talking, Pat, is that when I know what my working genius is, and when I'm working inside of my working genius, I'm going to come home a different person than if I'm working in something that's my frustrating. Is that what you call it? The frustrating genius?
Frustration. Yeah.
Yeah. If I'm in frustration and I come home, I'm not going to be the best version of myself.
No.
So that's why all these different domains of life are so interconnected, and why we have to pay attention to all of them.
Yeah.
You know how this affected my wife, because she was involved in this tool because she loves this kind of stuff like I do, but she's been raising I have been too. I'm very involved in raising our sons, but she's been full-time doing that, even, and running a Bible study and doing other things, but really doing a lot of the stuff every day. And after when I wrote the book and she read it, I said, "What'd you think?" She goes, "It was great. And I'm so mad." And she goes, now I realize I was doing things outside of my area of genius for 20 years.
Wow.
And what's funny is during all that time, I was like, "Laura, just hire somebody to do that stuff. Just outsource it. I know it's not your thing." And she goes, "No, I felt too guilty. But I would be a bad mom." Because moms are supposed to love like getting things done on time and paying the bills and getting the laundry done and getting the kids to school. And my wife, you know what her working geniuses are? Wonder and invention.
Wow.
So she's at the higher end where she loves coming up with new ideas and questioning things. And yet she was spending all of her time doing the other stuff. And one, she could have outsourced it if she'd have realized it. Or two, she could have at least given herself a break and some grace and said, "Hey, I'm going to make mistakes in this area, but I'm doing my best. It's not my genius. I shouldn't feel guilty." So I want people to avoid unnecessary guilt and self-judgment, or even judgment of others. We judge other people. We say, "How come you can't come up with a new idea?" A pastor wrote to us and said, "Listen," he took the working genius. He goes, "For 20 years, I thought I was a fraud." I said, "Why?" And he goes, "I couldn't write a sermon to save my life." He goes, "My friends can go for a walk in the woods and come out with a 4-week sermon series, and I couldn't do it." And I looked at his working genius type and I said, "Do you like counseling people? Do you like grief counseling and helping people?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, I'm great at that." Of course you are. Do you know there's other pastors who could write a homily, but they can't even talk to a person who's in grief? Because everybody has different. One pastor is not a pastor, is not a pastor. A CEO is not a CEO. A mom is not a mom, is not a mom. We have to understand that none of us are good at all of it. But there's so many people walking around out there feeling guilty for not being everything. And what a relief to know, oh, God just didn't give me those gifts.
That's why we need each other.
He made us to need each other. Life is a team sport.
Yeah.
So
I
love that. Okay, so we are running out of time, sadly, because I feel like we could just talk to you all day. I wish we had hours, but we have some questions that we ask all of our guests, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So, kind
of a lightning round.
Yeah, kind of a lightning round.
And I don't know what these questions are, so
I know this is going to be fun.
Great.
Okay, so in just a couple of sentences, tell us what your biggest obstacle is currently for getting the double win, winning at work, and succeeding at life.
My biggest obstacle is worrying about things that are not really the source of my frustration, and going back and understanding the real historical roots of my frustration and focusing on those. I distract myself with I have to fix this. I have to fix this. I have to fix this. If I could only fix this, I'd be happy. And it's like, nope, it's not about that stuff. It's about go back and deal with some of the core issues you have and quit trying to distract yourself by stuff that's
good answer.
That's such a great answer. Okay. How do you personally know now in this season of life that you've achieved the double win?
Oh, I mean, you pause there because first of all, I don't know if you've ever completely get there, but it's the thing we're looking for is peace.
Right.
It's peace. And that's what everybody wants. People go, I want to be happy. And it's like, I think you really want peace, because life is sad sometimes, but even in the midst of sadness, we can have peace. And
Yes.
so when you have those moments of peace, and whenever I tell that to people, like, yeah, that's really what I want. Because happiness, euphoria, you can't ever sustain that. But there is the possibility of sustainable peace. And when I have those glimpses of it, I'm there. I'm looking to have that all the time, regardless of external circumstances.
How do you know that you're at peace? Like, what are the clues that your body gives you, or your thoughts, or whatever?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's like true rest. And true rest is like taking that breath and realizing everything is fine. And being in the, and I know this sounds like a cliche, but being in the moment. Like, one of the things I do way too much is think about the future. I'm always thinking about the future. The Bible says, Jesus said, hey, the world is, the future's got plenty of problems of its own. Just all you have right now is now. And I think when we live in the moment and we're at peace in the moment, that's when it is. Because I've spent my whole life worrying about the future, and that's a great recipe for stress.
We're kindred spirits.
Yeah, we can relate to that. All right. What is one ritual or routine that helps you do what you do, especially get the double win?
Okay, so I have an app called Amen, which is
I'm familiar
literally, what's that?
I've heard of this.
Yeah, and it's free. And literally every morning I wake up and I hit play, and it reads the reading, that the daily reading, the psalm and the gospel reading, and it takes like 7 minutes, and it's easy, like, because it's just like the habit. So every day I start with that, and because I need some structural way to do it. If I have to do it on my own, it's just not going to happen. So every morning I wake up, I hit play, and I listen to 7 minutes of Bible, and that starts my day in the right direction.
Fantastic.
I love that.
Well, Pat, it's a privilege to know you. I'm honored that you agreed to come on the podcast, and you did not disappoint. This was powerful, rich, and I think our listeners are going to take away a ton of value from this. So thank you for being so open-hearted and giving us your best.
Absolutely.
Well, I could talk to you guys for hours. This is not work. It's fun, and it's raw, and it's good, because that's how God made us to live. So thanks for having me on here, you guys. I really appreciate it. I hope your listeners take something helpful away from it.
I know they will. Thank you.
Thanks again. That was a really fun interview.
Yeah, it was. It
What
was
did you enjoy about
surprising
it?
to me. Okay, so I don't know Pat. You know Pat. So this was my first experience of talking to him directly. And the thing that stood out to me was his incredible humility and vulnerability.
Yeah, me too.
I was just like, wow, he doesn't need to share any of this, and he was talking about kind of his own journey of healing and looking at his childhood wounds and kind of how previously those things came out sideways. I mean, who can't relate to that? Like, everybody raises their hand.
And I didn't know any of that.
I didn't know any of that either. I didn't know much, but.
And the funny thing is, it's kind of been our journey too. Kind of our whole family's going through this similar kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's really helpful or validating to hear that somebody else of his stature struggles with a lot of the same things.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's so open and vulnerable about it, and this is a good lesson for all of us to take away, that draws me to him.
Right. And I think the other thing to take away is it's never too late.
Yeah.
It's easy to think, well, my career is already established, my kids are almost grown, and you have kind of a list, and it's like, well, I wish I would have done this in my 20s or my 30s, but it's okay if you didn't. Like, unless you're dead, it's not too late.
Well, it's kind of that old thing about, the best time to plant an oak tree is 40 years ago. Second best time is today.
Right.
So if you if you didn't do it before, no problem. And if you don't have the double win right now, or if you haven't had it for the last few decades, it's never too late to start.
Yeah.
I think another insight I got from him too, and this is something I know, but he just said it, and that is that he's still pursuing the double win. And is there ever a point where you really get it?
Right.
It's a constant pursuit. It's not like you're going to get there
like
and
health.
Stay there. Yeah, exactly.
You can't just one day say, oh, I'm healthy, check. I mean, if you're really looking at it.
Or your marriage.
You're always tweaking things. You're always adjusting. Seasons of life change. And you have to keep changing your strategies to make it work now. And, I often say, I don't know if there's one day that I've ever nailed it. Like just 100% nailed it. But I loved what he said about peace was the indicator, and being able to be in the present moment was how he knew when he got the double win or when he was close to it. And it's funny because I'm seeing a theme start to develop among our guests.
Me too.
And that's fascinating to me.
I think it's fascinating that that's the language people are using.
Right. Unprompted.
That's the thing that they want.
Yeah.
Is peace. You know, happiness is probably another thing. Love is probably another thing. Joy, you know, to the extent that that's different from happiness. But peace is that thing that I think all of us are pursuing. Certainly that's what I want when I'm feeling anxious and laying awake in the middle of the night. You know, it's just like, I would give away half my kingdom for just peace.
Yeah. Well, I also really appreciated the conversation about working genius. You
Me
know,
too.
there are a number of different assessments that are kind of trying to get at this same thing. But I think what all of them have in common, and certainly explicitly his does, is the freedom to be who you're made to be. And that really that's where your highest and best contribution is going to be. And I think that distinction between it's not just how much you're working, it's how you're working, what you're actually doing. Because, you know, when we talk about the freedom compass and spending the majority of time in your desire zone and then ultimately getting the double win, it's not just about working less. It's also about working in your desire zone, in the things that you're made to do and how you're made to do them.
Well, you took the words right out of my mouth. And this is a new insight for me today, is it's not just the quantity of work, but it's the kind of work. And as you know, we were queued up. We were planning to talk to him about his book, The 3 Big Questions for a Frantic Family, because
we'll have to have him back on.
I know I have to talk about that. But the truth is, how you work at work is probably going to impact your family more than any single thing you could do.
Yeah.
Because yes, you want to spend time with your family. You want to give an appropriate amount of attention to work. But if you're doing the wrong kind of work and you're coming home burned out or frustrated or angry, irritated, you know, that doesn't bode well for the family.
Right.
So I think we did kind of talk about the family, or at least this is the precursor to having that rich family life that you want to have.
Well, we say this all the time. It's like life is not a bento box. These 9 life domains don't live in little hermetically sealed containers. They all kind of blend together, and what happens in one affects the others. And since most of us spend the vast majority of our waking hours at work, you know, then obviously how we feel about what we're doing, whether it fills us up or drains us, is going to leave us energized and able to be in alignment in the rest of our life with our values and what matters most, or it's going to undermine that.
Well, again, the book that you want to buy of Pat's that's appropriate for this conversation is The 6 Types of Working Genius, but take the assessment first, and you can find that at workinggenius.com. Megan and I have both taken that. I want to get Gail to take this.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I thought you were going to say you want our team to take it, which I also think would be awesome.
I think it'd be great too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, guys, hope you've enjoyed this conversation with Patrick Lencioni as much as we have. Let me just encourage you, if you haven't already, subscribe to this podcast and leave us a 5-star review, but only if you feel like the content is valuable. But that will help us to get noticed by other people, to spread the word. And we think this is a message that everybody needs, this whole pursuit of the double win, where you can win at work and succeed at life. We'll see you next week.